Welcome to the PrePost film review. I'm John Asquith.
I'm Matthew Stevenson.
So the idea behind this podcast is that we record our thoughts on a trailer when it's released, and we give sort of impressions of what we're expecting of a film, and then we come back however many months later after we've seen the film, and we record our impressions, and we sort of talk about the film. Just a warning that the second half of the podcast where we do talk about the film is full of spoilers. So
today we're going to be talking about The Edge of Tomorrow. So we're going to start by talking about the teaser trailer and the main trailer for the film. So that'll be a quick spoiler-free chat about our expectations for the film. And then we jump forward in time, and John and I will be chatting about the film itself and how we think it lived up to our expectations based on the trailer. That part of the podcast is going to be full of spoilers, so make sure you've seen the film before you listen to that.
Okay, on to our trailer thoughts.
What I am about to tell you sounds crazy, but you have to listen to me. Your very lives depend on it.
This is not the end.
You see, this isn't the first time.
So, John, we've just watched both trailers for The Edge of Tomorrow, the first little teaser and then the full trailer that was just released.
Yep.
What are your initial thoughts on this new Tom Cruise film?
I'm a little torn on this one, Matt.
Right.
Why? I overall say I'm cautiously optimistic, but I guess it's just a personal sort of preference. But I'm not a huge fan of these kind of looping. I guess it's a time travel film. Sort of looks.
I think
like
so.
it. That's not to say I don't like time travel films. I love it.
When you say these looping films, what other looping films are you referring to?
What I'm mainly thinking of recently is Source Code. And,
I didn't like Source Code.
Deja Vu.
Very overrated.
Going back even a bit longer.
Actually, yeah, good point. I can't even remember Deja Vu.
Yeah,
to be honest.
and like Source Code was okay, I thought, but I don't know. There's just something kind of inherently, just like the logic, usually in these kinds of films, just doesn't sit well with me. I don't have a problem with time travel. I love time travel as a story idea, but I don't know, something about reliving these things. Like it just always. I don't know, it never really grabs my attention that much. So, I think visually it looks great, and the CGI looks like it's going to be good. But then again, it could just be a big CGI fest. Yeah. I don't know.
Like every other big Hollywood blockbuster these days.
And, having Tom Cruise is like, again, could go either way for me. Sometimes he's great. Well, overall, I think he's a good actor, but
yeah, I agree.
He stars in a lot of kind of mediocre stuff.
That's true. I dislike him off screen, but sort of find him weirdly charismatic and appealing on screen. It's a strange thing.
Yeah, I agree actually. So I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess I would consider myself cautiously optimistic as well. I was pretty impressed with the first teaser trailer. I liked the tone of that. It had the weird kind of electronic-y singing music thing going on with the soundtrack,
I like that too.
Which sort of immediately grabbed me because I'd never heard anything like that before. And it gives it a weird vibe.
Yeah, I don't think it has like a brrr.
The old Inception horn. I don't think it does. I think there's sort of like a drum beat in the second.
Yeah, it's got like
trailer.
Something kind of similar, but not as overt.
No, which is that's great. That's a really good point because I'm so over that in trailers, big action trailers these days. But sort of similar to you, I think I'm kind of a little bit worried about the actual content itself. I think it could have sort of bitten off more than it can chew in terms of the time travel thing. I think a film that does it perfectly is Groundhog Day, which obviously looks exactly like this.
I didn't think of that comparison.
And I love Groundhog Day.
Of course, that is a great one.
But I think that gets it right, and that realises that the time travel is just a vehicle to explore character and
that's right,
and other grander themes, which...
Yeah, and I mean, they don't even go down a sci-fi angle in that.
No, not at all.
It's never explained.
So I'd just be worried that a big actiony Tom Cruise film wouldn't be very concerned about that sort of stuff, and it will just be an excuse to sort of redo action scenes over and over again, which could get pretty boring pretty quickly.
Yeah.
What about director Doug Liman's other work? He did Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I know you're not much of a fan of, but I quite like. The Bourne film, or the first Bourne film.
Yeah.
Are you a fan, or...?
I really like the first Bourne film. Mm-hmm. I think that had some really inventive action stuff in it.
Yep.
So maybe that will translate.
It did actually really set a precedent for action films like that. Yeah. Changed the way, especially the spy genre was filmed.
Totally. Yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I don't know, I should watch it again. I don't like it based on the one viewing I've had.
Yeah.
That was many
I think
years
you
ago.
should give it another chance. I think it's a very fun little film.
Yeah. See, and it's funny, that might connect to the thing we were talking about Tom Cruise before, off-screen persona, like the whole Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie thing just kind of
overshadowed the film for you.
Yeah, right. So, but anyway.
So he's not a draw card for you then, seeing his name attached to Edge of Tomorrow?
Tom Cruise?
No, not Tom. Doug Liman.
No.
Not necessarily.
No, I don't feel sort of either way about that.
Yeah.
But,
it doesn't jump out at me as something I'm super excited for, but there's certainly worse people out there directing action movies.
Yeah.
It could be good.
That's right.
It could be terrible.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty tough one to call, this one. It'll be interesting after we see the final film.
Yeah, it will be.
Fingers crossed it's a good rip-off of Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly. Best sci-fi rip-off of Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we've had this conversation. What day is it?
Judgment Day. You just came in with the fresh recruits.
This is not the end.
The invasion will fail, along with every soldier you are sending. We lose
This is not
everything.
the end.
All right, here we are in the sound booth, Matt.
We sure are.
Just getting it on and getting ready to talk about The Edge of Tomorrow. We've seen the film.
We have.
And I'm curious to know what your general thoughts are. We haven't really talked about it.
No, this is going to be fresh for both of us. I actually really liked this film, John. It surprised me a lot in a good way. I thought the action was pretty inventive. I loved the creature design. I thought they used the time travel sort of gimmick in a really smart way for the most part. I thought Tom Cruise was great. I thought Emily Blunt was great. I really, really liked this film. Apart from the ending, which I'm sure we'll get to a bit later.
Yeah, let's try and
But I had
that.
issues with the ending. But other than that, I really liked it. I think the big thing for me that stood out was that finally we get a friggin' big Hollywood blockbuster with a sense of humour. Like, this film
I totally agree.
is funny. There's moments in this film where I was crying. I was laughing so hard.
Really?
Yes, yeah. I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. In general, like, pretty much with everything you've said.
Yep.
I was so pleasantly surprised by this movie.
Yeah.
And that's such a nice thing.
It is, isn't it?
With these, like, summer blockbuster films.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was, I pretty much agree. You know, I think the storyline was kind of not what I was expecting. I was expecting something kind of, quite boring and by the numbers.
Yep.
And, you know, there's elements of that kind of stuff, but it really throws in a few unique twists, I think, on this kind of repeating day sort of storyline. The humour really was one of the main things, you know.
And coming off the back of that super somber trailer.
Exactly,
they showed, before it came out. I was expecting something dark and serious.
Yep.
It's just
it's
not that at all.
It really misrepresented it.
Yeah.
Like, not as much as, say, something like Godzilla does.
Yeah.
But, it was quite... And I really like... That's what I sort of miss about these big summer films. I feel like when we were growing up, or just, in film history in general, like, the big blockbusters were for everyone, and so there were quite funny moments in them and lighthearted sort of areas
Well,
for
yeah,
you to
that's-
like relax and have a joke, and
Definitely.
not everything has to be so deathly serious.
Yeah, big summer blockbusters used to be about adventure. It used to be
Exactly,
fun.
yeah.
The old Spielberg, Lucas stuff.
That's right. Yep. It felt, not in terms of filmmaking, like look or anything, but it sort of felt like a 90s or 80s sort of summer blockbuster in that sense. Like, here's your story that's, inventive enough. There's some great action. There's some funny parts. There's, sprinkled with little dramatic moments, and it just, stew it together for an hour and a half, and there you've got your film. I guess the length too didn't feel overly long to me.
No, yeah, I don't think it is. I think it comes in under 2 hours. I could be wrong, but it certainly didn't feel long.
Yeah, it didn't feel it anyway, and that was refreshing, because that's another trend lately with
3 hour.
Yeah, everything's an epic now, and
Yeah.
so it was really refreshing, I thought.
Mm.
So, what did you were happy with Tom Cruise in the central role?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I always find him really charismatic on screen. I think he did a great job. I think it was kind of interesting to put him in a character who starts off as quite a cowardly asshole prick,
Yeah,
and then evolves into the sort of traditional Tom Cruise that you know from all the action films. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think he was amazing. He didn't really do anything that was any different from what he's done before, but he did a good job. Like, he was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he always sort of surprises me. I kind of forget how good of an actor he is a lot of the time. And then, you go and see a movie of his, and even if the movie's not great, like he always is really committed to the roles, even though, as you say, the range isn't super wide or anything. But
so he did do stuff like Magnolia, which was pretty good.
That's true.
Something different.
Yeah, and I guess he did like that sleazy producer.
Oh,
in,
in Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder,
That's
yeah,
true.
which was out of his normal range.
What did you think of the aliens, like the creatures that they were fighting? Because I was pretty impressed with them.
Yeah, no, me too. I really liked that they weren't really that defined. They were kind of shifting around a lot, and the shapes kind of moved.
Yep.
You could tell there was like a almost spidery kind of structure to them. But all these weird tentacles they had. And I was actually, the first time he encounters the big blue one that bleeds on him. Yeah, I kind of got a shock from it. Like, it was quite menacing.
What I was going to say. I mean, I keep talking about how funny the film is, but the other thing is these creatures, which were, one, a unique design, like you were saying, but two, they were fucking scary. Like,
yeah.
They were vicious and they felt dangerous. Like, it wasn't these punsy things that were just there to be shot. They were frightening.
Yeah, they were, and the speed was another thing as well.
Definitely.
They moved so quickly, and so you're just fucked if there's one. You've got no chance. And I really liked, that they were a menacing presence, and that again is something that we haven't seen a lot of in blockbusters of late. Is like a CGI monster just feels like a CGI monster, whereas these felt. I don't know if there was any practical stuff or not, but they felt there, and they felt present, and they felt like there was danger to the actors, or the characters, I should say.
It's a little bit easy for a film like this because of the whole conceit behind him dying repeatedly, that they can feel that dangerous.
That's
like,
true,
people
because
can
you
just
can
get
show
killed.
people dying.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
don't have to play it safe.
And you know that it's going to be
point.
tough for him to overcome them, because he gets to try and a potentially infinite number of times until he gets it just right to kill them.
Yeah.
So they can, have that extra level of viciousness that you perhaps couldn't do in a normal blockbuster.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I really enjoyed the sort of middle section where you're seeing him, like die.
Where he's repeating it over and over.
Yeah, and it's just like so realistic. I don't know if that's the right word, but he'd get like one step further and then something happens, and I really enjoyed seeing that. And again, the humor comes into play there, like quite hilarious. Some of his deaths are.
Yeah, that's the scene that actually cracked me up the most was when he was doing the push-ups and he was trying to escape from the drill sergeant's little crew, and he tries to roll under an oncoming truck, but mistimes it, and the sound that it makes when it hits him and the squeal that he makes.
Yeah, I noticed that too. His like little yell was so hilarious.
Yeah, I was literally crying. I mean, it sounds fucking morbid that I'm laughing if I'm getting run over by a truck, but it is done in a very comedic way. Like they have these great little comedic touches. They know that this, is a setup for laughs. You can have all these funny little deaths that he has to go through because there is no consequence. He's going to wake up and he's fine.
That's right. Yeah, there was a another one where. It was, one of these quick shots where he was like running in his suit and a car just comes in from the side or something and knocks it looked like his head came off. I don't know if that was what happened or not, but I really enjoyed that moment. And in terms of all the looping as well, I liked that you got a sense for how often he'd been through it, but they didn't overplay him the same time, like having to go through things again and again. Like they showed it just enough, but then there would be moments where he would kind of hint that he's done it, so
I really
many
as well,
times.
Actually,
you don't really know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know going in. You'd think this was the first time because it's the first time you're seeing this stuff as a viewer.
Yeah.
But then something will happen, or he'll say some line that indicates that he's potentially done this hundreds of times before, and this is just another one where he's getting a little bit further.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was done really well. It was smart how they kind of like portrayed the amount of jumping that he'd been doing, or the amount of looping, I should say. Yeah. In time that he'd been doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. In terms of the sci-fi aspects of it and the time travel or time jumping, I guess it is, time resetting, time whatever. How did you feel about the sort of logic of that, and did that work for you,
Did until the end.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not very smart. It's never sort of explained any more than this is sort of what happens and this is the power that the aliens have.
Which I really liked.
Yeah,
they gave you just enough, and
I agree.
You just take that bit of information, even if it's a little silly, and just go with it, and it kind of holds up for most of the film, but as you say, until the end.
Yeah, I agree, and it sort of loops back into what I was saying before about the aliens being vicious and so dangerous, is because I guess they have this power, so they know how everything's going to play out. I guess they did before Tom Cruise got the power. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I assume when he got it, they didn't have it anymore.
Yeah, I think that's what I was a bit confused about that, actually.
Yeah, it's not quite clear. This is probably a perfect example of it not quite making sense when you think about it too much. But in the moment, I was not once sort of confused or felt like, I didn't know what was going on. It's not overly explained, but I don't think it needed to be. It was just the right amount of exposition to get you to buy into the conceit and then just roll with it.
Yep. What did you think of Emily Blunt, her character, and also the supporting cast?
I really liked Emily Blunt a lot, actually. I thought she was really great, and it was really great to see like a female action star. Like, she was kicking ass.
Yeah.
She was the one that was sort of in command and control the whole time until the very end, I guess, when Tom Cruise sort of reaches her level of expertise. But she's certainly the dominant one for the majority of the film, which I really liked. In terms of the supporting cast, they were all right. I don't think there was anything that really stood out. Bill Paxton was okay, kind of as the drill sergeant, and the other guys in whatever the company's name was, G Company or
J-Squad?
J-Squad, something like that.
Yeah.
They were funny enough. They're sort of the diverse crew of misfits.
Yeah.
That were kind of, had enough personality to sort of stand out, even though I can't remember any of their names.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point, though. You can't remember their names, but they had enough character to each have their own little personality, and it was refreshing to see that again, comparing to something like Godzilla, where all the soldiers, even the main character who's a soldier, just have no personality and are so boring, and we see that in quite a few big tentpole movies. And so,
how did you feel about the relationship between Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise's character?
I really liked it.
Mm.
It wasn't really, romantic. Like, towards the end, it sort of heads in that way. But I like, for the most part, that there wasn't a lot of that sort of, we have to have them falling in love.
Yeah,
and,
I totally agree.
You know, it hinted at that towards the end, but it wasn't forced and it wasn't in your face the whole time. And it was more about a respect that had to be earned between both of them. And I really like that. And I think that connects to her being a strong female role. And I really liked that. Yeah, I feel like I'm saying refreshing too much, but it really was that for me.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with their relationship. I think that was one of the minor qualms I had with the ending, is that it felt like it was more about a mutual respect and a tenderness. Like, there was a...
Yeah. You
there
can
was
sort of
something there.
really care for someone,
Yeah.
and he didn't want her to die because he was so sick of seeing it and really felt for her.
Actually, that's one of the parts that I really liked, is when... I actually can't remember what happened, but she dies and it loops back to him, which you've seen so many times previously, where he just like jumps up and he's straight back into it to try and redo the mission again to get a little bit further. But this time he's just so sick of seeing this woman he's developed feelings for get brutally killed that there is this sadness to him when he wakes up, and this kind of sense of, I don't know, hopelessness that, or I don't know, just him having to relive that moment over and over again is kind of this hell, this purgatory that he's stuck in a lot of ways.
I think they sold that really well. He goes off to the bar then, and he's like has a drink, and then realizes that the whole of London, I think, gets under attack.
Yes,
so he can't just run away or escape.
Yeah.
Which adds to the hopelessness of the situation.
And that actually reminded me of another point that I really liked about the film, is that it wasn't set in America.
Oh, yeah, I was going to bring that up as well.
That was, like, so refreshing.
Yes, it was. Please use that word.
I'm so sick of seeing another fucking big American city, whether it's New York or Chicago or whatever, just get decimated by aliens or monsters or spaceships or whatever the hell usually happens.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It was so nice that it was set in London and France and just Europe in general.
I remember thinking that as I was watching it and noticing that, because we're not used to seeing those locations as much, especially in this kind of setting.
Yeah.
And then I guess, to further that, you have 2 Australian characters in it, which I had no idea were in there, and that was kind of just nice, to see.
And Emily Blunt with her accent.
Yeah, British, obviously. So, the cast was like kind of diverse in that sense, and, there wasn't a whole big gung-ho American feel to it.
No, not at all. Going back to the whole like looping mechanic, I guess, there was some scenes later on when they sort of had to infiltrate some sort of government building in order to talk to the chief, the commander, to try and convince them to give them access to some magical machine that they needed, which I really liked, because again it was a great way of portraying the fact that he'd been through this so many times, yet we hadn't seen it. And he was kind of doing this almost ballet through the corridors, where he would step forward and then step backwards, just so he would stay out of the line of sight of all these different people that were walking in and out. And as I was watching that, all I could think of was this exactly like playing a video game.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
you remember the levels so well that you can kind of predict where the people are going to be at what time. Yeah. And it just made me think, like, this film as a whole is a really great kind of representation of what it's like playing a video game, or the joys of playing a video game. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. I was reminded of the same thing many times when I was watching it. And it feels like one. And normally you kind of say that as a negative towards a film like
I don't mean it as a negative at all.
Yeah, no, it was... it captured, as you say, like the joy of playing a game, and that feeling of like continuously trying and getting a bit further, and the relief when you get somewhere. Yeah. That was really great. And speaking of that infiltration into that place... That sort of reminds me, I was thinking when I was watching it that even though the movie centers on, these repeat activities, the action never got repetitive.
Yes.
It always switched things up, and it would show you the beach invasion enough, and in many different ways to keep that fresh. But then you'd have a scene like that where they're infiltrating, and this is a whole different sort of scene now. It's not even an action scene now. It's sort of almost a heisty kind of thing.
Yep.
And then, you know, the big action sequence at the end was, again, something else because the stakes are raised then.
Yeah, I really love that as well, and I think it had a lot to do with the varying up the location. Like, I think it spent just enough time, because the beach was an impressive set piece and it was great, but just when you were sort of feeling a little bit familiar with it, they'd mix it up and he'd be at a point where he'd sort of gotten past the beach level, and was at like this trailer park trying to steal a car, and then they were driving through the roads and into this kind of like fields. Yeah, countryside is the word I'm looking for. So it kind of like added these locations just when it needed to. It was like right at the right point in the story.
No.
And it kept it feeling fresh, and I don't know, opened the world up a lot too, because you kind of, especially at the beginning, it feels like you are just going to be looping through this beach assault. Like that seems like what the key to the film is. He just has to learn how to defeat these creatures on the beach, but then it suddenly opens up and they end up going to all these different varied locations, which I thought was great.
So we're pretty positive on this, but I'm wondering if there's any sort of, aside from the ending, which we'll get to, any sort of negatives at all, or can you remember anything that kind of let you down? I can
actually. That just reminded me of one.
Yeah?
One other qualm that I had with it was during the kind of emotional scenes where they're holding up in like an old abandoned house, and they have to get a helicopter working in order to fly somewhere. I actually can't remember what the logic behind that was, but for some reason they needed to get into the helicopter.
Yeah, they did.
And when we come in, you sort of think it's the first time again, but it turns out that they've been there many times before. And Tom Cruise does this whole speech about how they've never been able to get past this point. Like this, no matter what he tries, she always dies at this point. So he wants to delay it as long as possible, which was actually a really sweet moment. I really liked that. And then she ends up dying and he resets again. But when he goes back, he goes on his own and then just kills everything and continues past that point without her.
Yeah.
And that to me like just didn't make sense. I was sitting there thinking, well, if you could do that by yourself now, why couldn't you have just left her in the house?
Yeah, that's a good
and done
point.
the exact same thing last time.
I didn't notice that, but now that you point it out, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because it was so hard for them to get just there, you know, stealing the car and
I mean, I think it made emotional sense, and it gave the scene some sort of weight to them, and it felt
he gets
great
all
when
the
it
way
happened.
to the dam, doesn't he, by himself?
Yes,
that's right.
Which was an important character beat, I guess, but logically it kind of annoyed me. Not enough to take me out of the film.
No,
just sort of the question sprang to mind when I saw it.
Yeah, and there are little moments like that,
Yeah.
little logic leaps or things that don't quite sit right, but because the rest of the film is so good and such a joy, really,
so
just to
fun.
watch. Great cinema experience. You kind of forgive that, and I think that's the sign of a well done film, is that you can forgive these little things. Whereas if the feeling was overwhelmingly negative, it would be like, oh, and they fucked that up as well, and fuck this and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that sort of felt a bit odd to me was when Tom Cruise first wakes up at the military base and meets everyone, and he's first going to, you know, off to the beach and everything, and they just treat him like absolute shit. Yeah. And they're like, you're going to die, basically. You know, they make a joke about him dying and all that stuff. And I was expecting then when he wakes up, they would know that it was going to loop. And so that's why they were so carefree and didn't give a shit that he was there. And he couldn't like even turn, they didn't tell him how to turn the safety on his gun.
Yeah, so you thought that they knew that time was looping.
Yeah.
Everyone knew that time was looping.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a thing.
Okay.
They were all in on it because they were so carefree about him dying.
They just didn't care.
And I just didn't believe that at all. You know, regardless of the fact that, you know, I know he was called a deserter or a traitor or something like that.
I think that's probably where the motivation comes from.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
They're
but
meant to hate him because
it just felt too much to me. And, you know, I don't know. Yeah, tell him how to shoot. Give him a chance. Come on. So that, you know, and then you find out that he's the only one that sort of resets, and that sort of I had to adjust to that for a little bit of time there. But again, it wasn't enough for me to sort of hate the rest of the movie or anything.
Yeah.
It was just a small little nitpick.
Yeah, fair enough. So the ending of the film, John. How did you feel about how the film wrapped up?
The third act, for the most part, I really like.
Okay.
The action to get to the Louvre.
Yep.
Was cool. The fact that they had to, rig up the ship and like smash through everything while all the monsters are coming after them. And just to jump back for a second as well, when he, escapes with the machine that helps him mind bend with everything, and the car crashes, and then he gets the blood transfusion.
Oh yes, yeah. We should quickly talk about that.
Yeah, that was quite a shocking moment.
The fact that he'd lost his power, you mean?
Yeah, he'd lost the power now,
Yeah.
and you'd felt so safe during the rest of the movie, and you could laugh at the deaths, like we were saying.
Yeah.
And now it was like, holy shit,
Yeah, I agree.
The clock's on for real, and they did a really good job of setting that up.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. That was great. And that was a great way to immediately raise the stakes astronomically. 'Cause it's just changed everything. And now every single action matters. Every single thing that didn't matter previously now matters. He only has one shot at it.
Exactly.
So everything that the film was building on previously has all changed. So I agree. That was well done.
Yeah. And so then, linking that to the very end, the action there was, it wasn't the most inventive action, but it felt, again, you felt the danger and you felt
it had
worried
more
for
weight.
him. And, because he could die this time. And,
Yep.
and at that point, I thought he might, The movie was sort of strong enough and was kind of giving hints that maybe this is the road it was going down. So when they finally get in there and him and Emily Blunt, say their goodbyes basically to each other, they have a little cheeky kiss,
which I actually didn't like. I would have preferred it without the kiss, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I think I would have preferred it without. I was thinking please don't kiss.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah,
but it was kind of again this will sound weird, but a respect kiss.
Yeah, it wasn't a
big
super
passionate,
romantic. Pash. It was
it
just
was
a little.
We're humans here,
we're both going to die.
Yeah, let's just have a little kiss.
Just like we would do if we were in the same situation.
Exactly, of course. I've thought about it many times. And she goes off. You don't quite see her fate, but you suspect she gets killed. And then what I really liked was Tom Cruise's swimming down to the big boss, the final boss, and gets stabbed or whatever it is through the back. And I thought, oh, wow, he's dead.
Yeah, exactly how I felt.
The grenade stuff, goes down to the boss, blows it up. But then you start thinking, no, it can't really, can it? It can't. And then the smoky stuff sort of comes around.
The blood,
the blue blood. And then, it goes back. And this is where the main problems sort of come.
Yeah, because not only does it jump back, but it jumps back further than it's jumped before. And it jumps back to where the film opened, I think. Him asleep in the helicopter waking up.
Yeah, it's sort of an arbitrary point.
Yeah,
I
and it
still
makes
can't
no
quite figure
sense,
out
why he's suddenly jumping back further.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it hasn't reset anything. The monsters are all still dead, or aliens, or whatever they are, they're all still dead.
Yeah.
And everyone's celebrating like it's already happened, even though he's jumped back to before it happened. It's just a fucking mess. It makes no logical sense.
It doesn't. Even in a slightly forgiving time travel-y sort of let's try and find a loophole here.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, and I can't figure out what happened there.
No, and then even further than that, then it continues on, and everyone else's day is continuing on as if the aliens are still alive.
Yeah,
they're all about
true.
to go raid the beach.
Yeah.
No one's celebrating. He's in the same, with the same drill sergeant, goes and meets Emily Blunt, still training for an attack that now doesn't have to happen because everyone is apparently celebrating.
Really even notice that.
It's moronic.
That's so true. Why is she in there doing a little one-hand push-up thing?
She should be out having a beer.
Yeah. I mean, they did say something on a news bulletin or something that, we're still advancing into, check.
Yeah, that's
or
true,
something.
I suppose.
So
maybe
I guess
there still
maybe
could
that's
be,
the excuse.
remnants that they have to destroy or something.
They're still
I
going
don't
on the
know.
mission, but it's still just too similar. It's like exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's not hasn't shifted at all.
Yeah.
Really. So yeah, that was problematic.
Did you know? Apparently, the ending of the film wasn't written when they started filming it.
Really?
So they wrote the end of the film during filming,
Right.
which I think explains a lot because it just smacks of Hollywood
It does.
trying to make a
Yeah.
happy ending.
Yeah. There's
For
a
a
clear
film.
point there, isn't there, where
Yeah,
you can
didn't
tell
need it.
that ending is new and being put on. Like
Yeah,
at a
definitely. Because
later
I think that's the most frustrating thing about the ending is that it has this perfect, poignant ending in its hands. It happens on the screen. You watch them both die, which would have been a perfect ending to a film that's about a man whose death was
Means
inconsequential and
Yeah.
meaningless, and then
Very true.
the film ending with his death meaning something. Like it was this perfect
Exactly.
poetic ending,
Yeah.
and then they have this weird tacked on extra
moment.
happy ending. Yeah. Which not only destroys that great moment, but then makes no sense and destroys the logic of the film itself.
Yeah.
This is really disappointing.
And because he's sent there basically to die,
Yeah.
you know, for being a coward and for
Yeah.
trying to get out
Yep.
of stuff. And so you're right that the thematic stuff there
exactly.
would
It's like a
link
film about
perfectly.
death. Yeah.
First 10 minutes he's sent there, you know, as a coward that doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
Last 10 minutes, look how far he's come, and in between he's died 1,000 times.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like the perfect character arc. Like the starts the film with him. The one thing he doesn't want to do is die. That's all he doesn't want to do. And then it's the complete opposite by the end. He's willingly sacrificing himself to win the war.
I'm more bummed out about it now. I didn't like it, but I wasn't that upset. And now I think they really blew the chance.
I really think they did, which is really unfortunate. I don't think it totally destroys the film. I
No,
still
it
think it's a
doesn't.
great, fun
yeah.
film.
Yeah.
It just could have been really amazing.
Yeah, it could have been even better
Yeah.
for those last few minutes.
Because it does sour the film a little bit for me.
Mm.
I came out of the cinema quite angry that it had ended that way because I was so high on it before that. I was so
Yeah, me too.
impressed and I was so surprised that it was so fresh and fun, and then so disappointed in the end.
Yeah, I mean, at least it didn't end with them. I mean, it couldn't have because it was a time reset, but it wasn't like a big embrace or a big kiss or
Yeah.
he just kind of looks at her and smiles.
Actually, yeah,
So
the way it ended, that I thought I did that. The way it ended, I did actually like that beat of them making eye contact
Yeah,
and
me
him
too.
knowing and her not, and that was a nice little moment.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, when I was watching that, I sort of really enjoyed that. But then the overall idea just doesn't quite sit with the rest of the film.
While we're hating on the ending, I did actually just want to bring up. You said you liked how they sort of get to the Louvre and they have to sort of break in using the plane or whatever, they crash land the plane and all that sort of stuff. I quite like that as well, but what I didn't quite buy was that suddenly the whole ragtag group of J Squad would band together and just leave the base and suddenly help Tom Cruise, who is this, in their eyes, crazy person that can apparently, tell all their paths and know them intimately, even though he's never met them before. I did find that a bit of a stretch and a little bit cliche in a way. I would have preferred it if it was just him and Emily Blunt going on the mission.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think I would have too. I can understand where you're coming from. It didn't bother me as much. But, yeah, you're right. I guess at a certain point, you've just got to believe the crazy man who knows everything about you.
And I mean, it does,
Just go with it.
it pays off the time they spent with these characters in the first 2/3 of the film. I mean, it would be pointless to sort of introduce and mildly develop these characters if you weren't going to utilise them in some way or have some sort of arc for them.
Yeah.
So it makes sense in that respect, I guess.
Yeah.
But it just felt a little bit clunky, a little bit by the numbers, I guess. Whereas the rest of the film felt a bit better than that. I guess overall, even though I really disliked the ending, I still really liked the majority of the film. I would definitely recommend it, and I think I respect it more for being unique and at least quite intelligent and funny. And I would give it more props for being those things than having it 5 minutes of shitty ending at the very tail end of the film.
Yep, I totally agree. I think the pros far outweigh the cons. And it was from 10 minutes in, I was sort of in totally with the movie, and it was really fun cinema experience, and something that's reminded me of the Hollywood films we sort of grew up with, and
the good old days.
The good old days. Thanks for listening to the Pre-Post Film Review. I'm John Asquith.
And I'm Matthew Stevenson. We are really keen to hear your thoughts on The Edge of Tomorrow, so feel free to shoot us an email at prepostfilmreview@gmail.com.
Join us next episode. We'll be discussing How to Train Your Dragon 2. Thanks for listening.